Welcome to part one of the portrait of Jackie. I have taken my drawing and applied it to a 10 by 13 piece of velour paper. I have also reinforced my drawing. You can see my pencil lines. And now I'm putting my base coat down, avoiding the eyes because we don't want to get color on them. And I'm using a piece of Giraud number 124, flat on its side, and I'm just applying that all over the face area. I use it up on the end sometimes to go around the eyes because I don't want this color on the eyes. I've done a fairly detailed drawing with my 6B graphite pencil before I start applying color. It helps me to know where I'm going to put things and which areas are going to be shaded and which ones are not, and where the lights fall. I also wanted to get the hair, the shadows, which areas were going to be shadows and which ones were going to be in the light. As you can see, I'm putting the Giraud over the lip area as well. So I'm just putting a light layer all over. Now after I've added the Giraud, I'm using the end, the round end of a Rembrandt 339.7 light red oxide to go over the Giraud. And because the Rembrandt is harder, it pushes the Giraud into the fabric of the velour paper. So I'm just going over that lightly, pushing in that color and making it more even. Now I'm using a Carbothello 640 Caput Mortem Violet, which is a nice red-brown. I'm outlining her upper lid. I'm also going to outline her eyeball itself, go around the upper eyelashes and the lower, and around her iris, because Jackie has brown eyes. I want to point out as well, I used my white charcoal pencil to add a highlight in her iris as well as on her eyeball. So where the light strikes, I used that white charcoal pencil to add a light, and it's going to show through the other colors that we're going to put on. And be very careful when you're drawing the eyes. The shape of the eyes needs to be exact. So pay close attention to your reference photo and get them as accurately as you can. Now to add the pupil, I'm using a 2B charcoal pencil. This is a little harder than the normal 6B I use. And I'm adding the pupil, and I'm using a feathery stroke. We do not want to have a pupil that is a round, tight little ball. It just doesn't look as nice, so we want to feather that out. I add a little dab of pink in the corner of the eye where that membrane is, and I'm using a NuPastel 416 to add that pink. I'm going to sharpen up that area with my pencil. It got a little blurry. I got a little more color there than I wanted to, but I can always go back and correct that. Now I'm going to shade my eyeball using my 9B graphite pencil. And it's going to help make it look round. So I'm just using the pencil around the top and around the bottom of the white of the eye. And you can see that our white charcoal pencil shows up and makes our eyeball look rounder. And this is a very versatile pencil. Now we're going to color her eyes. So I'm going to color her entire iris with 253 Cocoa Brown. Just flat color it like you would in a coloring book. So I want to use like 3 values when I color an eye. Now I'm using 263 Indian Red to add a little deeper color of brown to her eye. I want to go around that pupil. There's usually more color around the pupil. So that's going to be our middle value color. To add a deeper value, and for that I'm going to use 353 Cordovan, particularly up at the top of the iris and across that lid, because that's where the shadow falls on the eye. You want to be sure and add that shadow. So I'm going to use that 353 to do that and add some deeper color. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now to go a little bit darker, I'm going to use the point of a NuPastel 229 black. I'm going to deepen the pupil with that. I'm also going to add a deeper shadow over the eyeball. So our eyes are really beginning to look lifelike now. I'm using the 2B charcoal pencil to add the rim on the outside of the eye, and the reason I'm using that is because it's harder than the NuPastel, and so it's going to give me a finer, more precise line, and that's important, that we have a very precise line. Now to add the secondary highlight in her brown eyes, I'm using 266 Pale Vermilion to put a tiny bit of red down at the bottom of the eye, and then over top of that I'm going to use 233 Raw Sienna to put a little yellowish tone over that, which mixes with the red and has an orange glow to it, and it just brings her eyes to life. Now I'm continuing to use my 2B charcoal pencil to refine the line, make sure everything is accurate. And shade the eyeball a little more with the graphite pencil. The last thing we'll do is add her eyelashes. But we want to make sure the eye is exactly like we want it. And to add the brightest light, I use the sharpened tip of a 211 NuPastel. And it just brings her eyes to life. It's very exciting to me when I add the eyes in whatever I'm painting. I also added a little bit of highlight on the eyeball itself. Here I'm just refining the eye a little more, looking at my reference, deciding if it needs to be a little bit darker, and if so, I'm use my pencil to darken things up. This pencil is actually the 635 Bistro pencil, and then back to my charcoal pencil. just getting the colors deep enough. And now it's time to add some shadows to the face. I'm going to use the 204 Sandalwood NuPastel to add shadow over the eye. You can see that we're starting to shape the form, and we're going to do this slowly, building up the values until we get it just the way we want it. So I'm going to start with this 204 and develop the shadows around the eyes, and we'll work downward over the rest of the face. I'm going to put in her eyebrows with the Carbothello pencil. This is the 640, so I'm just going to draw very soft strokes. You could also do this with the 253 Cocoa Brown NuPastel. I just happen to have the 640 laying right there next to my hand. I'm using the end of a 548.7 Blue Violet Rembrandt to add a little color right there where the eye, the shadow is, the eye and the bridge of the nose. And that just grays it down. And I'm going to go over that with the 204 Sandalwood. I'm continuing to use the Sandalwood to add the light shadows around the nose, which brings the nose forward, helps project it, and on the underside of the nose, and we'll further define that as we go along. I also need to add a shadow that's cast on the forehead from the hair, where her hair is swept over to the side. I want to darken that area with the 204 Sandalwood as well. I'm also applying the Sandalwood on the cheek area to help shape that. This is going to be a shadow. We're going to add more colors to darken that, but right now we're just kind of putting the framework in to add the other colors to. Now, after using the Sandalwood, we're going to switch to the Caran d'Ache pencils. I just love these pencils because they are so soft and work so beautifully on the velour paper. This is number 89, or Burnt Sienna, and I'm using it, just lightly am using it to add and deepen the shadows around the eye. So we're taking these shadows one step darker with the pencil. And get the corner of that eye. Just very lightly. Then I'm going to use the end of the 548.7 Rembrandt to add that little purpley color to the shadow. Not using very much, just using a little bit in the corner. Now, if I think that's a little harsh and I want to blend it, I can use the Caran d'Ache 583, which is just about the same color as our previous skin tones, but it lightens up the area and helps to blend it. I'm a big fan of these colors. Now I'm going a little bit darker with the 89 Caran d'Ache, which is dark carmine. So I'm fully developing this eye, just darkening things. The Caran d'Ache is a very high-grade pastel pencil. Other pastel pencils are not this soft, and they are not going to work on velour paper as well, which is why I chose these. They're just really fabulous. So I've deepened this shadow and spreading it out ever so gently. And it really adds dimension to my painting. Now this is the tip of the number 66 russet, so it's a red color. So when we need to add a little more red to the painting, we can use this. Here again, I'm using the 583 to blend these colors together. Darkening that lower rim with the 89. And this is the Bister. No, this is the 640. Sorry. This is the 640. The Carbothello is a harder pencil, so I couldn't do the same thing with it. Each pencil has a purpose. So I want to add this shadow. So I'm doing that with the pencil too. This is the 69 Burnt Sienna. I'm going to deepen the color on the cheek with the 583 Caran d'Ache pencil. I enjoy working with the pencils very much. Those of you who are more comfortable with pencils will enjoy this. So I'm just adding light layers, light color. I'm going in two different directions, kind of cross-hatching it back and forth to get an even distribution of color. I'm going to deepen the shadow now with the 69 Burnt Sienna, just lightly. And I'm shaping the face. I'm keeping in mind that this is the cheek area and that the top of the cheek is struck by light, and then it gets darker as it curls under. So you have to pay attention to the planes of the face when we do this so we can add just the right colors. Now I've added a little bit of that pencil, and now I've decided I'm going to use a new pastel. This is 383, which is a coral, to add color to this area. It has a little more red in it than the pencil, and it makes a very soft look. I love new pastels. Now over the coral, I'm using the pencil. The pencil is a little more brown, so I can deepen the coral, the shadow area, by using the pencil over, and again cross-hatching the color going back and forth. Here I'm working on the side of the nose, and we're building up enough color now where I can use my finger to kind of blend the color together. So I'm just rubbing that in. This is looking very nice. Now I want to blend that in to the face, and I can do that with that Rembrandt that we used earlier, which is the 339.7. That blends the colors together and pushes it into the fabric of the paper. I want to use 339.8 Rembrandt to lighten up that light struck area of the cheek. I'm going to develop that. This is one shade lighter than the previous color we used. So I want to add that little light that catches at the corner, a little between the forehead too. Now I'm using the Carbothello 430 Middle Blue. Now by using this over the red areas, I can create a gentle shadow, a colorful shadow. I didn't want to use the purple again. I just wanted to use this blue. Because this is a harder pencil, it just deposits a little bit of color in this area, which adds a great deal of depth. The Caran Dash 583 to blend this area. Just push this in a little bit. Now here I've zoomed into the eye areas, and I'm using the Caran Dash 89 Dark Carmine to add these teeny tiny little eyelashes that are down on her bottom lid. We don't want to use a black for this area. We don't want it to be harsh. The darker the lines around the eyes, the harsher it makes your portrait. So we don't want to do that. But I am using just a tiny bit of dark brown. So I'm going to use dark brown. I'm flipping up these eyelashes, single hard strokes. This is a Carbothello Beaster color, 635. And I'm putting in these eyelashes. Jackie has very long eyelashes. This is the 89 Dark Carmine. I'm adding a little darker brown in there, and back to the Beaster, which is 635 Carbothello. Now I have a white pastel pencil, Carbothello number 100, or you could also use your white charcoal pencil. I wanted to lighten that little rim down there just barely with that. I'm deepening the brown with the 640 Carbothello. I go back and forth between my pencils, just looking at my painting and adjusting it, seeing what it needs and how I can change things to make it better. So I'm constantly comparing things when I paint. I'm looking at different values. Now I'm going to do the other eye. I'm going to the other side. I'm really happy with the one. So this is we're going to begin again with the 69 Burnt Sienna, and this is the 383 Coral, deepening the color. Getting that eyelid with the 89 Dark Carmine, going a little bit darker, accentuating her eyelid. So I'm using the same colors as I did before. I'm adding a touch of 430 Carbothello Ultra Blue Middle underneath the eye, just to shade that shadow and gray it down a bit. It works really well for that. This is the 66 Russet. I need to add a little red in that corner, and the NuPastel was too big to go in there. Now this is the 750 black Carbothello pencil. I could also use my 2B charcoal pencil. Adding her eyelashes. Using the brown, add a few brown lashes. It keeps it from being too harsh. Now we're going to add some lights. We're going to start building the lights up. And for this, we're going to use 376 Peach. This is a lovely, warm light, and we're going to use it on the bridge of the nose. And we're going to use it on the eyelids and just build up the color around the eye area. You can see that all we have done so far around the eyes has really helped to add that dimensionality that we're looking for, that three-dimensional quality in this portrait. I'm using a 372.10, which is Rembrandt Permanent Red, to add some lights on the face there. We'll add more later. This is 253 Cocoa Brown, adding some color to the eyebrows. This is a little bit warmer than the pastel pencil we use, so I'm just adding a little color with that as well. And we're going to add some shadows. Now, to add this shadow on her forehead, I'm using a Giraud 436, which is pretty dark compared to what we've been doing, but don't let it throw you. It's going to make a great shadow area. But we're going to get that in, and then we're going to modify it with our other colors. I'm also adding this Giraud on the cheek. I'll be adding more in a little bit. I want to kind of concentrate on the forehead area, so I want to gray that down with the 548.7 Violet. So that modifies the shadow, making it a little cooler. I've also, this little area underneath the curve of her hair is very, very dark, so I'm using my graphite pencil to darken it down and see if that's going to be enough to darken this shadow. I'm probably going to have to do something else. We can better be able to judge the value after we get the hair in, which we'll do a little bit later on. I'm going to concentrate on this cheek area and use my original Giraud 124 to kind of smooth it out. Each layer we build up makes it softer. So I'm kind of blending that. It's very velvety now. Rubbing it with my finger kind of blends it in. So I'm going to use the 383 Coral and start just as the curve of her cheek, building color there. So this has a red tone to it. So I'm using a little bit of that. And then I think I'm going to switch to the 66 Caran d'Ache pencil, Russet, which is a little redder. It's not quite red enough, but we're going to start the process with that. So I'm going to add a little more. It's easier to add color than it is to take it off. So I like to build my layers gradually. Now this is Giraud 50. I'm using it on the end, and I'm going to add the red to her cheek. Now I know it looks kind of bright right now, but we're going to blend it in and it's going to be perfect. It's just a perfect color. I'm moving it around with my finger. As I said before, there's enough pastel on the paper now that I can do that. And I'm going to add a layer of 339.7, just pushing that color in and blending it. And that looks beautiful. It adds just enough color to her face. Taking more 436 and darkening that shadow on her forehead. I'm going to work on Jackie's nostrils now. This is the 263 NuPastel. I'm going to start with that. I think a mistake a lot of people make with nostrils is that they're not black holes. They have a strong red tint to it. So observe your photo reference that you're working from and make sure you get that accurate. Now this is 416 NuPastel. I'm making that much pinker and going around the edge. And this is the Caran d'Ache 69 Burnt Sienna. I'm deepening that because there's a shadow cast by her nose. And this is the 635 Carbothello Bister, and I'm making the nostril even darker with that, but I'm still not using black. But now I'm going to add a tad of black to darken it up some. But I have that red underneath, so it's not just a solid black. And we're going to create a grayed down shadow by adding a light layer of 430 middle blue on top of that. A little more Caran d'Ache to shape the nostril and also the shadow area. Continue to shadow around the nose with the 069 Burnt Sienna Caran d'Ache. I want to caution you about sharpening these pencils too. Do not use an electric sharpener because the stick is very soft and you don't want to damage your pastel. So hand sharpen these if possible. Now we have some 383, so we're deepening the shadow, kind of a middle value of the shadow, and then using our 430 middle blue to gray that down just a little bit. Continue shading this area with the Caran d'Ache 69 pencil, shaping the tip of her nose, paying very careful attention. All of these things are important in getting a likeness for your portrait. So be very observant. Now we're going to need to add some lights on her nose. And for this, I'm using 366 Shell Pink. The Shell Pink is lighter than the peach. It's also cooler, and it's appropriate in this area. I put the shell pink on the nostril, but now I'm using the peach on the bridge and the very edge of her nose. You can see that just makes her nose pop off her face. And now I'm going to make a cooler light on the side of her nose with the shell pink 366. To make that highlight a little brighter, I'm going over it with 277 ivory. You can see that that just makes it brighter. Now I'm back with the 376 peach over her eyebrow and on her forehead. Continuing to add light on this side of her face with the 276 peach. Now I'm going to use the 339.7. Then I want to make it a little brighter, so I'm going to use the 372.10, which is a very nice glow. I decided to add a bit more to make it a little bit brighter. I like that. I'm also going on the other side and brightening it up. This is the 372.10, I believe. 372.10. Continuing to make adjustments, adding the peach here, 376, just a little dot on the end of her nose. So I'm continually evaluating my work. Be sure and take breaks every now and then come back and look at it and see what you need to change. This is the Caran Dash 66, which adds a little red. And then the 430 Carbothello Ultra Blue Middle to add a little color to that shadow under the nose. That just grays it down just a little bit. This is my 640 Carbothello Caput Mortem Violet, which is a nice brown, so I add a little brown there. And the 89 Caran d'Ache. Got to get that little shadow in between, that dips down in between the lips, the point of the lips. And I'm going to smooth that out with my 204 Sandalwood. So we're going to add the shadow under the lip. And we're going to start working in that area. I'm adding shadows now on the lower part of her face with the 204 NuPastel Sandalwood. I'm adding some darker shadows where her cheek curves and makes a shadow as she's starting to smile a little bit. And I'm using the Caran d'Ache 89 or dark carmine for this. So I'm just lightly feathering it. Again, I like to use these pencils because I can change the tone and color very gradually. And then cool it down with the 430 Middle Blue. Starting to darken that cheek area with the Caran d'Ache 69. And I'm going to add in a shadow here. I'm going to deepen it with the 548-7 Rembrandt, which is that blue-violet color, which works really well. We're going to work on the other side and do the same thing. I'm going to deepen the cheek area there with the pencil. It's the Caran d'Ache 69. And this is the Russet 66. I'm going to add a pink tone there. If you remember, we did not add red on this side. It's not a very big area, so I'm going to use the pencil instead. I'm going to add some more red to the cheek with the pencil, the number 66 Russet, on this side as well. I'll start to shape these lips. Just a little bit more red on the nose. I think it got a little bit gray here, so I'm going to brighten that up with the Caran d'Ache 583. Little touches of 366. Just a little bit on the tip of the nose, the corner of the eye, places where it catches the light. Reshaping that eye. That's a back and forth thing until you get it just like you want it. I lightened the area with 366, and then I didn't quite like it, so I'm using some sandalwood, the 204, to go over that and take some of that brightness out. That's one thing about these pastels and this paper that you can do. You can take things out that you don't like, or you can add them back. Now I'm using my Peach 376 to add light to the top of Jackie's upper lip. That will help her lips to come forward in the picture plane and develop that three-dimensional quality that we want. I'm going back and forth with the lights and the pencils and the 383 to get the lip shaped up like I want it to be. darkening the cheek a little bit more, building that up with my number 69 pencil. I'm using the number 50 Giraud on its end to add some red to the cheek on the right-hand side. And I'm going to add a little more red on the left, just picking up that color that's in Jackie's face. It looks very nice. And now it's time to work on Jackie's mouth. So this is my Carbothello 640 Caput Mortem Violet pencil, my red-brown. And I'm drawing in the separation between her upper and lower lip, which is the darkest area on her mouth. Now I'm going to color in her lips with 416 Dark Rose NuPastel. Now I'm going to use my Caran d'Ache number 66 Russet to kind of punch the color up, take it a little more to the warm red side. Generally speaking, the upper lip is cooler than the bottom lip, so we're going to need to warm that up some. I need to make this darker. Now this is Carbothello 330 and it's called purple, but it's really more like an alizarin crimson and it's cool. So I'm deepening the separation, the crease between her lips, and I'm darkening her upper lip with that Carbothello 330. I haven't found another color like this, so I use this a lot if I need an alizarin crimson kind of color. So I'm just shading in a few of the creases with this. We're going to need to add more color. This is the Caran d'Ache 89, the dark carmine. So I'm darkening that a little bit darker up there. Now I'm going to punch the color up on the lower lip, and we're going to use that Giraud 50, that warm red that we used on her cheeks. Now I'm using the Caran d'Ache 69, the burnt sienna, to add a little color right in the corner of her mouth where the plane of her mouth goes down. So I'm going to darken that area slightly. And this is just the perfect tool and color for that. And that brings her mouth forward on her face. That's often called the barrel of the mouth. So I'm also going to shade the top area a bit into the corner. Now I'm always looking at my reference photo. So I see another area that needs some darkening, I'm going to darken it. I'm going to add some highlights now on the lip, on the edge of, this is the edge of the mouth actually, on the outside of the lip. This is 376 Peach. Adding that brighter color, light, brighter and lighter. And here I'm using 37210 Rembrandt. It's a little bit lighter than the peach to add some lighter color over the peach that I just put down. Now this is 366 Shell Pink. I'm adding the little bright highlights on her lip, and they are vertical. The bottom lip has ridges in it, and so we want to add them vertically. Now this is a beautiful pink. This is 286 Madder Pink. So I'm using it to add the bright pink highlights. And I'm going to put a few in the upper lip as well. Lightening that just a little bit. And then if I need to tweak that, this is the 330 Carbothello pencil. I'm going to apply a darker color over that, and I just keep going back and forth. Now I'm using the 430 middle blue to add some blue over top of that dark red. So that creates a purple and makes a subtle gray tone in that shadow. And I'm going to add the brightest light with the very tip of my white 211 NuPastel. I always keep a little piece sharpened. Now I'm going to add some shadows to the lower part of the face, and so we're going to use the 204 Sandalwood to add those shadows on the side of the cheek, working down the side of her face. I peeled the paper off the bottom of that sandalwood because I needed a wider area to color with. So instead of the tip, I'm using the base to zigzag and crosshatch back and forth to add that first shading color that we're going to use, the 204 Sandalwood, to the bottom of her face and her chin area. So I'm going right over some of the previous areas that we colored. That just helps blend it all together. Here I'm adding some darker color with our 436 Giraud, and I'm starting on the right side of her face in the shadow side and stroking in some of that color. I'm using the end of the Giraud and I'll blend that with my finger into the 204 Sandalwood. And I'm using a little bit of 548.7 Rembrandt Blue Violet to go over that and tone down the red areas. Now here I'm using the 69 Burnt Sienna to increase that shadow in the corner of the mouth and over on the side of the face. I'm just lightly going back and forth, cross-hatching with my pencil. Very light stroke here. This is why I love using these pencils in a portrait. It's very easy to form the skin tones and just using a feather touch to increase them. Jackie has a little dimple there, so I'm going to put that darker area in. Now here I'm using the 204 Sandalwood to color in her neck. And then over that I'm going to use the 436 Giraud to add the shadow color, because there is a shadow over the neck. The neck's generally a little darker than the rest of the face. This is the 69 Burnt Sienna pencil again. I'm using it to gradually darken the shapes, shadows on the face. Now this is a brown 223 burnt umber. I used just a little bit of that in the darkest area under the chin. Back to using my pencils again. And just a little bit of 548.7 to gray down the red area on the chin. Here I'm using the 376 NuPastel Peach to add some highlights as I see them. Highlighting that little dimple area. We have to go back and forth with our values and put in what we need. Sometimes we don't add enough. Sometimes we add too much and have to take some out. But I'd rather bring up my colors gradually than add too much at once. This is the 366 Shell Pink. And a little more peach. Now right here I added 204 sandalwood to cover up a light because I thought it was too strong. And here I'm using the back to the peach again, strengthening the lights. Now this is the Caran d'Ache 66 Russet that I'm using to add a little more red to the cheek. This is almost like doing, the layers are so light, it's like doing a watercolor to some extent, just gently adding these different colors in light layers to build up for the desired effect. Now we're going to block in the hair, and I'm going to do that by adding in dark shapes first, following my reference photo. I'm using 353 Cordovan, and I'm blocking in the dark shapes that I see in Jackie's hair. Now this little area of her face here, I'm making it darker with my Caran d'Ache pencils, the 69 and the 89, because the value of the side of her face and the darkness of her hair is almost the same in that area, and I want that to show. Now this is 229 Black NuPastel. I need to go a shade darker here, so I'm adding that black. Now this is the 353. It's slightly out of camera shot, but I'm coloring in her bangs up there, and I'm sorry about that, but it'll come into view soon. I'm using the Caran d'Ache 89 to add color to the forehead. I'm outlining the hair on the right side of the face with 353 Cordovan. It's the darkest brown that I have. It's like a Mars Violet. Now when I get these dark tones in her hair in, I'll be able to judge the values in the face better, see if I need to deepen them. And that's a little bit of 229 burnt umber. Excuse me, 223 burnt umber. Just kind of sketching it in. This is the 353. Carefully drawing in these darks. I'm using the bottom edge of my 253 Cocoa Brown to kind of draw in a few wispy hairs. This is a warmer brown. I think it's going to work nice for a highlight. And for the brightest light, I think I'm going to use the 276 Buff. So I'm just kind of trying that out to see how I like it. And I think it's going to work out good, especially here in the front. I'm going to add more dark color with the 353 Cordovan to the hair that's on the right side of Jackie's face. I'm going around her eyelashes a bit, being very careful as I shape that cheek with my Cordovan NuPastel. And now I'm going to add the darks to the other side of Jackie's hair with the 353 Cordovan. If I need to make it darker there, I'm going to use 229 black. So these are the colors I'm going to be using on this side for the darks. 353 Cordovan, 223 burnt umber, 229 black, and 263 Indian red. And these are all NuPastels. I can see now that after adding those few darks that I'm going to need to make the side of the face a little darker too. I'm going to have to darken that value. So I'm using my Caran d'Ache 89 pencil to do that. And this is the 223 Burnt Umber. The Burnt Umber color has less red in it than the Cordovan or the Indian Red, so it's a useful color to have in your toolbox. Here I'm going to use the bottom edge of my 223 Burnt Umber, it's just slightly out of view up there, to add a broader swath of color to kind of quickly color in this area and develop my values. And after that, I'm going to take the 353 Cordovan and add the darker values that I see. You can see this is much, much darker, so I'm stroking in based on my reference photo, always using that. I'm putting in those colors. Now I'm getting ready to use a very interesting highlight color. This is 304 Orchid, which is a pale purple, which I like a lot. That just adds a lot to the painting. So I'm going to add that to my color list. So as you can see, I've worked out the colors in this little section of hair, which kind of tells me what I'm going to do for the rest of it. So I'm using the 353 and the 229 for those super darks, the 223 Burnt Umber for a medium value, and 263 Indian Red. But for that highlight, I'm using the 304 Orchid. Now I've added a lighter color to that, which is 314 Old Lilac, and put that right over the orchid, which adds a brightness and makes the hair shine. So we've picked cool tones to use for our highlights, which is going to work out really well. So based on that, I can go back with my black NuPastel and add even darker areas. Let's paint the earring. First, I'm going to outline it with black, put the shadows in around it, and then I'm going to put in a little bit of raw sienna. So that's my gold color. That's 233. So we need to add some more colors to that. This is a little bit of white pastel pencil, putting in the highlights. You could use white charcoal pencil. And this is the 253 Cocoa Brown. So I'm adding a middle value of gold, so to speak, around those highlight areas. put a little brown around the earring with the Caran d'Ache pencil 89. And now I'm outlining the earring with my charcoal pencil, my 2B charcoal pencil, to make it very precise. We want this to glitter like gold. Now we need to add a little more color, and I think I'm going to use 266 Pale Vermilion to put a little red in that. Now I know it looks red right now, but on top of that, I'm going to put a bright highlight with 211 white, and I'm going to darken down the red just slightly with my charcoal pencil. Use my 640 Carbothello to add a little more brown. I'm just working back and forth because I wasn't really sure how I was going to do this. So I'm just putting a little more brown in there. And some more raw sienna, which I think really makes it the gold color. Here I'm drawing a few more hairs around her face. I'm darkening it with the 353. I'm darkening under the chin with 353. I'm also going to use it to make the corner of the mouth a little darker. So once we got the hair values in, we realized other things we needed to darken up. So I'm just correcting those as I see them. And here I'm going to use the 253 Cocoa Brown to add a little color on that chin. I'm going to continue to darken the chin area with the Giraud 436. It's just a beautiful color, so I'm going to add some dark in that area. I add a little and I smooth it in with my finger because now we've built up several layers of pastel, and if it's not enough color, then I will add some more. I'm going to add a bit to the side of the face as well. Blend that in softly with my finger. Velour paper is so good for that. You can just blend things in with your finger. I'm going to add a few lights to the face now with a Rembrandt 339.8. It's not our lightest value, but it's lighter than some of the others. So I'm just adding a few lights and see how I like that. And I can add more lights as I finish up the picture. For right now, we're just going to go one step lighter. We need to go darker under the chin, and to do that, I'm going to use my Carbothello 330 purple pencil to add darker red color. Remember I said that was kind of like alizarin crimson under the chin. Now to darken that color, I'm going to go over it with a Carbothello number 400 Parisian blue. Now, this is a dark, not quite navy blue, but it mixes with the dark red to make a nice purple color, which is really good to complement the skin tone and to take that shadow darker. We don't want to use a black to make a shadow. We want our shadows to have lots of color. So these two blended together work very well, especially on a skin tone. So I'm going to take that 330 and I'm going to lightly glaze over other areas of the face as well. On the side of the face, it's going to work well. Just now, since this is a red tone, it's punching up that red area. You can see where the cheek is. And then I can put the blue over that to gray it down and make a shadow. They just work really well together. I'm going to take things just a little bit step darker with those same two pencils. The Carbothello 330 purple and the 400 Parisian blue. And this time I'm going to deepen the shadows just a little bit more. This time I'm going next to the eye, where the bangs come over the eye and cast a shadow. So I'm going to put down the 330 and then add the 430 on top of that, just to take it a little bit darker. So when you paint, keep looking at the values and how you can shift and change them. This is very pretty, just a wisp of color in that area and also next to the eye. Here I've added a couple of strokes of highlights to the hair with the 314 Old Lilac. We'll talk more about that in the next segment. I'm shading the eyeballs a little bit with the 9B graphite pencil, and I'm going to punch up the white in the eye with my 211 white pastel. So I'm making final adjustments to the face. Using the 330, I'm just going to add a little more color in the shadow and use the 400 Carbothello over that. That was a little blue, so I'm going to add a little more red over that to deepen that shadow. Now I'm going to add in some background. When I do backgrounds, I like to incorporate colors that I've already been using in my painting. And so for the first color, I'm going to use the Blue Violet 548.7 to just kind of put in a light background area. I'm not being I'm not putting in a real solid background. I'm just trying out different colors to see what is going to complement the skin tone. Now I've decided to add to that a 304 Orchid, and I'm using the bottom of it. You can break the stick and use the side if you want to. So this is adding a lighter color. And then on top of that, I'm adding a still lighter color with the 314 Old Lilac. And I'm just putting that in randomly. And I like the way that looks. That adds a lot of light and life, and it's very complementary to our subject. So here I'm using the tip of my pastel to get in between that little lock of hair. But just continue to add these in a random manner. I could take the paper off the Rembrandt and sand the side and use it that way. And just whatever you would like to do to apply color. And if you want to use different colors, you can. And here I'm using a little piece of 366 Shell Pink to add a lighter color. And I'm just going to continue working back and forth between these colors to create the background on this side. I've sped this up a little bit as I finish up this side of the background, just randomly applying color. Join me for part 2 where we finish Jackie's hair and the background on the other side.